Hello and welcome to class number 6 about inactive flipping. You often see guides about active flipping, but a lot less about inactive flipping. And people often say it works the same, but inactive just takes longer and you use bigger margins. Now that's mostly true, but if that's all the information you're going to get, then I'm sure a lot of you are going to struggle with inactive flipping. So in this class, I'll try to give you a better explanation of it and some more insight. Now the setup of the class is going to be similar to the active flipping one. So first I'm going to talk about inactive flipping in general, and then with help of the merged live graphs. And in the end I'll do the VIP giveaway. Now don't start inactive flipping until you're experienced at active flipping. You really won't do much good without having a full understanding of it. So if you're not experienced enough yet, or maybe you still need to learn it, then please watch class 2 about active flipping. I put a link here in the video. So as mentioned in the past, inactive flipping is pretty much item flipping while you are not around the Grand Exchange. So you could be training something like, I don't know, like Dungeoneering, or you may not be in RuneScape at all, but at school, with friends, or asleep. It doesn't really matter what you're doing, you can always make money, and inactive flipping is a great way to do that without much effort. Active flipping and inactive flipping are pretty much opposites. With active flipping you flip faster for smaller margins, and with inactive flipping it is slower for bigger margins. Now what usually happens is over time people begin to prefer inactive flipping because it's much less intensive, and once you're good at it, it's quite profitable. And it's also just funner to see larger profits from flips than like having a lot of flips with smaller profits. Now keep in mind that it's really harder than active flipping, as you basically only get one chance to decide the price for your item. And if the price is wrong, then your offers are not going to complete or only partially, and your chance at making money will be wasted. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call it time wasted, because each time you fail, you learn something new as well, but of course it sucks to miss out on the money. So let's get started with the first step, which is finding an item. Now, just like with active flipping, this is difficult for a lot of people. But you learn from active flipping that sometimes flipping an item is very slow, and those items can be great to flip inactively for large margins. Now, examples of these are the ones you can see on your screen, like dragon ladders, unfinished potions, armor sets, player imports gear, PvP weapons and armor, and there are many more examples. Basically, you can literally inactive flip every item in the game, and of course some are better than others, but don't be afraid to try out a lot of different items. And if you're starting, I suggest you to focus on the ones with a lower volume, as those will likely have bigger margins. You can of course flip the ones with a higher volume too, but you'll notice, like for example the ones in the top 100 most traded items, it's harder to inactively flip them because there is so much volume that there will be less extreme situations where they crash incredibly deeply, and so on, because there's just a lot of people flipping them. Now they do fluctuate a lot, but they tend to stay in the same range, so they are easy inactive flips, but they're not much better profits than the same flip but an active one. So I honestly suggest you to try to focus on the ones with a lower volume. Now you know what to do about picking an item. You have to decide your buy and sell prices. Now with active flipping you learned how to price check. Yeah, I know it's not that complicated, but anyways, you learned how to price check. When you do inactive flipping you might check the prices too, but you won't use them directly. Now instead you're going to be aiming to buy lower than the low price and sell higher than the high price, or maybe a combination of that, so like buying at the same price and trying to sell higher, or selling at the same price and trying to buy lower. Now you can already guess it here. In order for your offer to complete, the item is going to need to fluctuate a lot to make that happen. Now the most common occurrence to get hold of items for cheap prices is just a matter of supply and demand. Like for example, someone made a lot of summoning pouches and they want to sell them instantly. All the flipping offers above yours fill, and then eventually only yours is left over, and then you get the stock. It's usually just a matter of impatience or natural fluctuation. Now the thing is, items generally do fluctuate a lot during the day, and our VIP members will know that for sure with the live graphs. An example of that is this image here, where you can just see this is during a 1 day time frame, where you can just see it fluctuates so much. and the grand exchange graph just doesn't tell you that. Now, if you don't have live graphs, it's going to be a bit more difficult to properly and actively flip, because you're going to need to follow up on your items. And when I say follow up, that means regular price checks during the day, like I'd say at least 4 at different points of the day, and you're going to need to note them down, and from active flipping them too, you're going to learn what their usual margins are for active flipping and for inactive. You really need to do a lot more research to properly inactively flip items without the live graphs. But it's very possible to do it without research too, but then it's going to be depending a bit more on luck and possibly your own skill, and you might be waiting a lot more too to try to catch items for a cheap price, and that's not really using your money efficiently. Now, I can imagine at this point you might still be unsure what exactly to do, so to get started I suggest you to find a stable graph of an item you're familiar with, because that's going to help you a lot. Now, you price check the item and then you put your buy offer 1 to 10% lower than the low price. Now, the reason I say 1 to 10% is because it depends on the item. If it's something like a spirit shield or a piece of next gear or something, then putting it 10% lower might be quite ambitious, so it's going to be less than that. And on the other hand, if it's something like a potion, then putting it 1% lower really isn't much. So yeah, you gotta adjust your percentage to that a little bit. And then next up, you gotta check if the item is not inflated. So you don't want it to crash on you if the low price is already too high. So make sure that the low price is not quite a bit above the medium grand exchange price or anything. And then next up, if the margins are already really big, then you can stick with them. You don't always need to make them bigger or to aim for more, because if the margins are already pretty big, then you're only going to miss out on stock, as the current margins might be dominated by other inactive flippers, or maybe you're going to start some under or overcutting war if you make them smaller on the other hand. Now, by starting like that, you'll pretty much find out if an item buys or not. If you're not getting anything or very little after hours, then maybe your buy offer is too low or the item may not be good right now. So make sure you adjust it next time and try again, or perhaps try a different item if you really don't like it. Now, if your offer is completely failing on the other hand, then you either pick the right price or maybe a little too high. So experiment with it and try to be realistic, and you'll soon figure out what the best margins are for this specific item. Now, don't get me wrong here, it's very possible to achieve these very large profit percentages on a lot of different items, but keeping your offer in for days to try to flip something isn't exactly efficient, and it's not really inactive flipping anymore either. It's just trying your luck at a very good margin. Now, your return on investment needs to be good enough for the time put in, or you might as well actively flip and get more profits if profit's what you're aiming for. So when you inactively flip, always consider if the profit was worth the time you put in. And of course, everyone would love to get perfect flips from the very lowest buy prices to the highest sell prices there are, but don't push yourself too hard, because you learn and you get better over time, and expecting to always flip items for the maximum profit might be a bit too ambitious. It's something you can aim for, but don't constantly expect it of yourself, because that's not going to make your merchanting any fun. So just try your best and improve over time. Like if you look at this Virtus Wand right here, it was insane. But honestly, if you flipped a Virtus Wand for anything in between that, it's still great, you know, it's a lot of money, so really don't expect yourself to always buy in at the right time and always sell at the right time. Because honestly, the day you can do that, you are the richest merchant in the whole game. Now, another tip that I might have mentioned before is noting down what you have done. What margins you had, how long it took, if you managed to buy and sell all the stock the first try, and and so on. It'll be an easy guideline for you for the next time. I know a lot of people think that they can do this mentally, myself included, but once it's about a large amount of items you haven't flipped them in a long time or something, it can be difficult to remember how exactly things work. Now, when you do use live graphs, inactive flipping is a lot easier because of the historical data. So let's check out merch.com and show you some examples of how exactly you should go about this. So simply start off by picking a random life graph. I picked a clean torsal graph here, and the first thing you do is looking at the 4-hour graph. As you can see here, some pretty small margins, really not so good for any active flipping. There are some nicer margins here around pretty much, no, these are not great either. So when you see that, it's usually not so inviting to do active flipping. But when you go to the 1-day graph, you'll see that the item actually fluctuated quite a lot during the day. And if you pay close attention here, you'll see that it has this roof price of 18,990, and that one keeps returning. So you can pretty much tell here someone is inactively flipping them and selling them at that price, so that is going to be your high price as well, as they really won't get above that until that person is done selling. And it's a pretty good sell price too, like you can get decent margins on them, and that's pretty much what you gotta pick. Now if you look at the low price here, it fluctuates quite a bit too, and yeah, here about 18.55, which seems to be a pretty decent low price for you, and then you can flip them for about 500 GP margins. Now if you look even further here to make sure that the item isn't heavily inflated, it has been rising quite a bit, but as you can see during the last period here, it's been pretty stable, so it's relatively safe to do an inactive flip on. Now if I go zoom in a little bit here, this big rise here, you can see it's update related, so you should not take that into account for inactive flips. It has nothing to do with natural fluctuation. This is really to do with an update, so don't base your flipping on that. But if you look at this point here, for example, these fluctuations are natural. You can see pretty nice 500 to 600 GP margins, and yeah, those are pretty much inactive flipping worthy. And I suggest you to stick with those kind of prices. Yeah, let's pick another item. Let's see. The broad tip bolts are down. I gotta go fix those soon. So yeah, picking black dragon leathers here. Let's have a look here, the 4-hour graph. Pretty small margins again. Even the larger one, yeah, these are still pretty small, 200-ish each, which is not that much for dragon leathers. They tend to be a bit bigger. If I look at the 1-day graph here, not enough fluctuation really. They're fairly stable. There's only one peak there for the 5.1k and here one for the 5k, which only happens like about 4 times. If we look at the 7-day graph, like just looking here, it has a few low points. Yeah, here 4.7k, and that repeats several times, so that's a fairly safe low price. But the high price really doesn't fluctuate enough at all. You have those very low peaks here with the buy price, but the sell price is just not giving you much opportunity to make money. So pretty much all the money you save here has to come from the low price. So right now this is not a good item to inactively flip. As you can see from the graph, you really got to look at each graph individually and decide for yourself if you think it's worth it or not. So I'm going to look further and pick up another item. Let's have a look here. Packages are down too. I gotta go fix those as well. Alright, radar potion unfinished. Yeah, an alright amount of fluctuation, not that much, but the margins are better than the ones you had on the Dragonhide. So here you can see over 400 each margins, which are good. And yeah, a nice high price and a nice low price here. So 3.6k and 3.15k, which is a great margin to actively flip at, so I would definitely go for that. But first we gotta check more data as usual, obviously. So we're going to check out the 1-day graph again. And as you can see here, it has this very low peak here. That's not something you should look at. Same with these 2 peaks here, because they only happened 2 times and the other one once. So what you want to look at is this low price of like 3.15k, which we mentioned before, and then a high price of, like as you can see, it keeps repeating, high price of, let's have a look, 3.7k, so that's pretty much a 550 each margin, almost 600 each, which is great for inactive flipping, and this is definitely a decent item to inactively flip. It's stable, it has good margins, good fluctuation, and there's definitely some money to be made on this one right here. And next up, I'd like to show you the Fury graph. This graph has a lot of examples too of inactive flipping, so you can see quite a lot of fluctuation. This is the 1 week graph, and yeah, if I throw up an average on there, you can see that the average range is pretty much around the 3.25 mil. That's pretty much the medium price for this whole time. And so if you're going to buy, then you want to make sure that you're not buying above that point, as that is a bit inflated, like that would be a bit too high and would not be a good choice for your inactive flipping. It drops below that on quite a few occasions too, so what you want to do is pick that, which is about 3.17k low, 3.16k. That's pretty much what you want to pick as a low price, and then the high price you can pretty much draw a line through that too, which is like 3.20, I'd say 3.27, 3.26 or so, and then you pretty much have 80k margins for inactive flipping on Furies. With a limit of 100, it's quite nice. And if we open up the regular Grand Exchange graph here, gotta put it on 7 days. Yeah, if you just compare the two graphs, if you see how much fluctuation there is here, and if you see how stable this one is, without the live graphs, it makes a large difference for your inactive flipping. Let me just throw out the average here. Now the averages are all quite far off the current graph, because of the recent rises the Fury has had, so that's not really going to work. But yeah, again, like here you can see that the average price is around 3.2, and that's pretty much what you would want to go for if you didn't have live graphs as a medium price, so you would have to go below that. Now you can see a lot of fluctuation here, and again those peaks. A safe high price to take would be like 3.28, like here, as it repeats itself several times, and like I said, you would be flipping your Furies for about 80 to 100k each, which is absolutely great and makes for very good inactive flipping. With a high limit, you can put a lot of money into this, and there are tons more examples out there for you to be using. Now, inactive flipping does carry a risk, because you'll always be away for a longer period of time while not being up to date about what exactly is going on. So to prevent yourself from losing money, there are some times where you should avoid doing it. First of all, you have the last few days of the month until the behind the scenes for the next month comes out. People tend to sell off their stuff around this time because they're afraid of losing money on it because of new updates, which is quite normal. Now on top of that, people who bought the special membership packs at the beginning of the year, like the gold pack and the silver pack and such, they get early information on the behind the scenes like a few days before the start of a new month. So you don't want to be stuck with inactive flips when those people respond to that, or when you're not online for the real behind the scenes to come out. So definitely avoid inactive flipping around that time, just to be safe. Now, as most of you will know, Jagex also does behind the scenes videos on Fridays, which reveal more information about updates, and usually about next week's update. So therefore it's also advised to avoid inactive flips on Friday until the video is released, as this information may heavily affect certain items. And that is pretty much all there is to inactive flipping that I can tell or advise you. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments. You can do that in any of our videos anyways, and we'll respond to you as soon as we can. For any questions or just to hang out, you can also find us in-game in the French chat merge. I'll be in there whenever I'm online. And you can also find us on IRC under #merge, or on our forums on merge.com. Anyways, let's make 3 people happy this time. We're going to do 3 one-month VIP giveaways this time. So as always, we do this through a random number generator which picks out 3 of our YouTube subscribers. So to take part in this or any other giveaway we do in the future, just subscribe to our channel and you're automatically entered in a draw. Good luck. The winners will be announced in 2 weeks after the release of this video, so on April 17th, and we will contact them through YouTube. Now I hope you guys learned something new this class. Take care and good luck with your inactive flipping.